Hello, English 9 students. Let's take a look at section 3 of the story A Man Called Horse. This is called Horse's Courtship of Pretty Calf and Counting First Coup. Back home, he remembered, I could marry just about any girl I'd want to. But he wasted little time thinking about that. A future was something to be earned. The most he dared do was wink at Pretty Calf now and then, or state his admiration while she giggled and hid her face. The least he dared do to win his bride was to elope with her, but he had to give her a horse to put the seal of tribe approval on that, and he had no horse until he killed a man to get one. His opportunity came in early spring. He was casually accepted by that time. He did not belong, but he was amusing to the crows, like a strange pet, or they would not have fed him through the winter. His chance came when he was hunting small game with 3 young boys who were his guards, as well as his scornful companions. Rabbits and birds were of no account in a camp well fed on buffalo meat, but they made good targets. His party walked far that day. All of them at once saw the 2 horses in a sheltered coulee. The boys and the man crawled forward on their bellies, and then they saw an Indian who lay on the ground, moaning, a lone traveler. From the way the boys inched eagerly forward, Horse knew the man was fair prey, a member of some enemy tribe. This is the way a captive white man acquired wealth and honor to win a bride and saved his life. He shot an arrow into the sick man, a split second ahead of one of his small companions, and dashed forward to strike the still groaning man with his bow to count first coup. Then he seized the hobbled horses. Paragraph 57. By the time he had the horses secure and with them his hope for freedom, the boys had followed, counting coup with gestures and shrieks that had practiced since boyhood, and one of them had the scalp. The white man was grimly amused to see the boy double up with sudden nausea when he had the thing in his hand. There was a hubbub in the camp when they rode in that evening, 2 of them on each horse. The captive was noticed. Indians who had ignored him as a slave stared at the brave man who had struck first coup and had stolen horses. 59. The hubbub lasted all night as fathers boasted loudly of their young sons' exploits. The white man was called upon to settle an argument between 2 fierce boys as to which of them had struck second coup and which must be satisfied with third. After much talk that went over his head, he solemnly pointed at the nearest boy. He didn't know which boy it was and didn't care, but the boy did. The white man had watched warriors in their triumph. He knew what to do. Modesty about achievements had no place among the Crow people. When a man did something big, he told about it. The white man smeared his face with grease and charcoal. He walked inside the teepee circle, chanting and singing. He used his own language. You heathens, you savages, he shouted. I'm going to get out of here someday. I am going to get away. The Crow people listened respectfully. In the Crow tongue, he shouted, Horse, I am horse. And they nodded. He had a right to boast, and he had 2 horses. Before dawn, the white man and his bride were sheltered beyond a far hill, and he was telling her, I love you, little lady, I love you. She looked at him with her great dark eyes, and he thought she understood his English words, or as much as she needed to understand. You are my treasure, he said, more precious than jewels, better than fine gold. I am going to call you Freedom. 66. When they returned to camp 2 days later, he was bold but worried. His ace, he suspected, might not be high enough in the game he was playing without being sure of the rules, but it served. Old Greasy Hand raged, but not at him. She complained loudly that her daughter had let herself go too cheap. But the marriage was as good as any Crow marriage. He had paid a horse. He learned the language faster after that, from Pretty Calf, whom he sometimes called Freedom. He learned that his attentive, adoring bride was 14 years old. One thing he had not guessed was the difference that being Pretty Calf's husband would make in his relationship to her mother and brother. He had hoped only to make his position a little safer, but he had not expected to be treated with dignity. Greasy Hand no longer spoke to him at all. When the white man spoke to her, his bride murmured in dismay, explaining at great length that he must never do that. There could be no conversation between a man and his mother-in-law. He could not even mention a word that was part of her name. That's the end of section 3. I hope you enjoyed reading.